All right, so glad to be back together again. We're looking at the shows in season 4, episode 4, part 2. We had half a season or half of episode 2. We stopped at point when Jesus is talking, he's having a little portico chat, the couple of the disciples, while the rest of the gang is in there arguing about stuff. So one theme I just recall for you is that in the last couple episodes, we've had instances which have actually matched or follow along with the lectionary in the church unintentionally, just the way it's worked out, that the last several episodes are occurrences where the disciples are argumentative. They are, remember, Peter's named, or Simon's named Peter the Rock, and the disciples are unsettled by that. They are debating what that means. And along with what that means, they are arguing or contentious with each other about how the relationship has changed, or if it's changed, or why Jesus picked him, why he didn't pick them, and what does it mean that he didn't pick them, and is he going to pick them for something else, and when is that going to be, and should we ask him about it, and on that went. So that was represented, I think, episode 2. And then 3 is when they're walking along the road, if you remember, and have this argument again, this discussion between them. And then James and John are with their mom, and their mom says, "You can't just let Simon get named Peter and take all the glory. You've got to get in there and tell him that you want to be his two main guys, the sons of thunder, right? Peter." James and John, the sons of thunder, and you want to be, right there beside him, right and left, right by him. So you have to go tell him. You have to ask him and tell him, because he told you that you could ask him anything, which he did, right? So in the last episode, they've been very at it, because they're asking each other, should we ask him? Should we not ask him? When should we ask him? Should we wait? Should we not wait? And in fact, in this episode 4, the last week when we watched the first half, if you remember, Matthew was looking out in a room, looking out the window. Jesus was in Peter's house. Jesus was at the table talking with Peter, and they were standing across the room debating whether or not it should be now. Should we talk to him now, or should we wait for later? And then Peter got up and talked to Matthew, and things started to change, and they didn't say anything. So it's getting more and more pressures built between them about when they should say it, because the fear is that they're going to miss their opportunity. If Jesus picked Simon, who's he going to pick next? And they're not going to get a chance. Will.
So sorry to ask this because I missed last time, but that's the mother of the Zebedee brothers is encouraging them to ask, because in the Bible she asks.
Yes, and yeah, she's encouraging them to ask.
So as it shows, and is taking a little bit of a different spin on it.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's a good point. So if you look up, or if you're reading things about the Chosen, you see there's a lot of criticism about the Chosen, about changing the biblical story. Then it's going to happen again in this one. It happened in the last one, right? He healed the blind man in front of the temple, and in the Bible, in Matthew's gospel, he spits in the ground, he makes mud, and he puts the mud patties on the guy's eyes, and he says, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," right there. But in this one, he told James to go get a bucket of water, and James brought the bucket of water to him, and then he washed in the bucket of water. And after he had his eyesight and saw Jesus, he got up and went right into the temple at the behest of a temple priest who was offended by the healing. So there's a lot of contention online. I actually never saw it. I never looked for it, but I found it a lot in the last year about the changing of the biblical story. So the sadness that incurs, at least in me, is that they're missing the point. So the story is a little bit different, but the idea or the intention is to fulfill the meaning of the event. And so condensing the event where the man doesn't go to the pool and come back because they haven't got time in the show, into taking the water, the going to the pools was not the point. It was the healing that was the point. And so this was what they were trying to make happen. And to criticize the program and say that this is bad. In fact, there's a couple of pastors out there that are say it's damning people and you shouldn't watch it, and they're encouraging people not to watch it. Have missed the whole thing, because this show is bringing people to Christ. This show is bringing people to see the gospel, understand the gospel in a new way that never had any interest before. These are not people who are big, heavy churchgoers that want to watch the show. These are people who got into it because it's just a good show, and now have found themselves asking questions and looking for churches. And there's lots of testimonies of young people who've gone to church and started to try to find out more about God through this program, which, according to these pastors, if they were doing what the pastors had said, they never would have made this program. And those young people may or may never have gotten in a situation where they wound up questioning their own faith and finding God in their life. So there are little differences in the stories. There's going to be a little difference again in tonight's story. They condensed something a little bit, but that's a necessity because we haven't got 9 hours to watch it. This is one episode, and it's the meaning, it's the intention of what is going on that's important. So yeah, but so for us, it's the contention between the disciples, which is still there, which hits ahead tonight. This is all coming on the back of episode 3, where Rama was killed. And so there is a lot of tumult going on there as well, but it's been months now. That timeline moved forward in the last episode, that little musical vignette that showed Jesus doing lots of ministry in about a 5-minute section all over the place. So this is several months from that event taking place going forward. So if you're watching, go ahead and turn off your pause us right now and go to about 1424 on your marker. It's Jesus is sitting on the portico. He's talking with 2 of the disciples while the rest of the gang's in the back. And Peter's going to come up and talk to him in a minute, and that's where we're going to start, and we'll catch you here in just a minute. All right, we are back. So who would like to kick us off?
I know it's all legitimate, but I still can't trust guys. I don't know what it is.
Brings that history. It's all that
It's that history, yeah.
That's a hard thing to get around. Is the history, and it digs deep, and we're taught that, right? We're taught to hang on to those feelings and that emotion and that distrust that's deeply ingrained in what we are, who we are. So yeah, that's understandable. Absolutely.
But I think also we've said this in last several episodes, but you can feel the transition coming. Transition to a whole another thing.
Right.
Darker thing. We all know what's coming, obviously, but how they're getting there and how things are changing, it's becoming more and more obvious.
Yeah.
I found it very interesting the way they asked the question. Seeing it in an actor rather than just the words on the paper kind of showed how it looks a lot more towards selfish gain. Like they're using Jesus, and like he says, you don't know what you're asking for. So it's interesting to see that, and how also when you read it, it's a paragraph. So to see the way Jesus interacted and how that reaction took place with, he walked away and then they had another conversation. Then he said, basically, I need alone time. I'll catch up with you. Seeing it as kind of split up conversation, or more of like Jesus really was struggling and wrestling with that, and how it wasn't just one singular back and forth, was very interesting to see how, realistically that could have played out in some form more like that than just the paragraph type on the page where it was all said at once.
Mm-hmm.
And also like how much with the selfish gain as well, with the mother of the Sons of Thunder, how she was pressuring them because she wanted them to have goodness or have it good. Like you talked about how Simon Peter got that, I guess, promotion in their eyes, and they all thought they need to get it, and they were angry at James and John for saying, how could you ask this in front of us? So it's very interesting how they're seeing that hierarchy and how they're doing that. And I think this is one of the areas that the Chosen really helps us understand and see the words on the page much better in realistic human action and behavior.
It adds circumstance,
right?
And it's true in the scripture, we really lose a lot of the circumstance. I mean, it's Jesus is teaching, or Jesus is talking, or Jesus turns to the disciples, or the disciples ask a question, but we don't get any of the circumstance, nothing around it. Are they in the house? Are they on the road? What are they doing? And how does this play out? And we don't always get the emotion that's being conveyed. And that is the hard part of just reading the scripture, or just like Will's saying right off the page. And that's the gift of doing it this way, of being able to see it and live into it a little bit. And I think feel ourselves in that place. We're watching them have this event and thinking, I'm sitting there when he said ransom for all, and Peter goes,
right,
ransom for who? And then Z says, who's been kidnapped? And then Jesus turns away. In my mind, of course, I'm saying to myself, I would have gotten it. I would have said something, because I would have gotten it. So we put ourselves into the crowd, we put ourselves into the place, and oftentimes we put ourselves in the best the best person in the crowd, right? We're the one that would have gotten it, or we are the one that would have done something. You ever watch a movie when something goes wrong and you go, if I was there, I would have done that.
Every time.
yeah, we're the hero. We're the one that gets it. We're the one that makes the difference. Yeah.
I think
so.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think about that too, and it's painful to recognize it in yourself, but I think we'd all be Thomas, doubting and having to see to believe.
Yeah. It's and that's maybe one of the gifts again that we're getting from this program, is being able to watch this and then contemplate, what would that be for us, for me? What would it be like for me to be in that moment? And then if I say, well, if I was in that moment, I would have done what they did. So what am I doing today? I have this, I say I would have gotten it, I would have been there. So am I living that truth? Am I being that person in my life? I make myself that person in the moment, in the thing. So it must be still me today. So I think this really gives us an opportunity to think about who we are and how we would or should respond to the gifts that God gives, the subtle gifts that we miss. Obviously, Jesus wasn't being subtle, but they certainly missed what he was saying. And
highest gets it better than they do.
Absolutely. That whole talk, that was a little mixture of Luke and Matthew. Both Luke and Matthew have the story of the centurion. It's a mixture because they had so remember Gaius, when they're talking, Gaius says to them, will you let me ask him? You think that's kind of a weird thing to do. Why isn't, well, that was actually a formal thing to do. It's very appropriate in Roman culture to ask the disciples, to ask the ones who are representing the rabbi or the teacher or the authority, if it's allowed, if they will be allowed. And then those people go and do the introduction to make it happen. So that was a very respectful thing for Gaius to do, and a very appropriate thing. And then to wait outside, I mean, it's beyond humble. He's, think about who he is. He is this, the supreme military figure here. He has the power of life and death every day in every way, over everybody, even his own soldiers, with very few exceptions. And he's standing in the street waiting for them to come back and let him in.
Is a praetor the same as a centurion?
He's like the number one centurion of all the centurions.
So a praetor is a centurion.
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna ask about that. I guess it's just terminology.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely a beautiful witness in him, and hopefully we'll see with his family and his wife. Obviously, his wife having hangups, and that, as I anticipate, will be a fun relationship and change to take hold of.
Yep.
Do we think that it's possible that he was the head centurion? Or would we have thought he was just a regular lowly centurion, I guess?
When we mean in the scripture?
Yeah.
Well, there's really no background to it. It just says the centurion, one day a centurion comes. So at the base of his rank is always going to be the centurion, but he is elevated in his rank to be the first centurion. So he's the very first among all the centurions and has the extra power. But at the base, he's just a centurion. And interestingly enough, it's the same thing with bishops. Bishops at their base, in fact, a lot of bishops after they retire, they take off the purple shirt and put the black one back on. And they just say, because I'm just at the base, I'm just a priest. That's all I am. What do you say, Al?
Like you and I, when we were in the military, like a first sergeant kind of role, kind of like the same enlisted pay grade, but top of that enlisted pay grade, or even like a sergeant major, like you would think.
Right.
That kind of figure. Okay.
Yep.
Trying to understand how that would work. I know it's a little different with the Roman soldiers and life or death decisions, like you just said, but
yeah. Well, I guess think of it like
or would be like a commander level kind of thing, would it?
Yeah, we have a sergeant major of the Marine Corps.
Right.
So he is just a sergeant major, but he's not just a sergeant major.
No, he's not.
No. So this is what Gaius is. He's just, you put him in the room with a bunch of sergeant majors, they're the same rank, but he's not,
but he's above them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, same thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Not from less than E9. So, okay, that makes sense now.
Yep. Yep. And everybody knows it. And from the inside of the service, that's where it really counts. Everybody in the service knows it, and they're going to treat it accordingly.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Can't get into it. It's just too late. The Gaius, if you'll notice, was the first one of everyone to kneel. In fact, did you notice Matthew's face when Gaius knelt?
That threw me off. I was not expecting that.
A little surprised.
He immediately came in, took a knee, and everybody's jaws just dropped.
Yeah. I thought Matthew was brilliant. The characterization of Matthew, his look was startled, but it was mixed with a little shame that he's looking at this Roman soldier that he's known who's doing something that he's never done, that none of them have ever done. And I thought, and this is the look that Jesus had, right? Jesus is taken aback, looking at him like he's kneeling. And that's the same speech that he tells, that Jesus turns around. Now, who's he talking to here? This is not the crowd. This is the disciples. He turns to the disciples and he said, "This man has more faith than anybody I've met."
Including them.
Including them in the room.
Yeah. These ones that he's sent out to do miracles. He's telling them that this guy right here has more faith than they do. That's huge. That's huge. The witness of a man who is not part of the inner group in any way, shape, or form, seems to be free from the weight of the group expectation. Held down. I've said in sermons before, teaching, that the Jews were looking for a Messiah to come in one of two ways: a David or a Moses. A conquering soldier that would win every battle, or kind of the mystic prophet that would come with power to change the world. And the suffering servant Messiah was not looked for. And they did not know what to do with him. Not with that. It just didn't make any sense. And it's no wonder that the authorities really felt threatened by what he was saying. This was what he was saying on the road. I know it was really hard to hear or really hard to understand.
Oh yeah.
This is just a part of it. Psalm 38. All my longings lie open before you, O Lord. My sighing is not hidden from you. My heart pounds, my strength fails me. Even the light has gone from my eyes. My friends and companions avoid me. Even my kin are far away, are far from me. So this is a 38 is a really a gut-wrenching psalm of desperation, of this sense of aloneness. You know, that Jesus, and at this point in Chosen, he's being confronted with so many things that are pointing toward what's going to happen in Jerusalem. That he's living forward into the events that are about to take place. You know, watching the the oil press. You know, the oil pouring out. I thought that was very well done, like blood pouring out and being put into the chalice. And this
Is that
light.
why he was kind of scrunching up?
Yeah.
Was it him thinking of like a knowledge of himself?
Yes.
Like he was feeling it.
Yep. Of what's going to come.
Yeah.
What's going to happen. And just to this psalm, as he's crying out, like his prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, you know, sweating blood. He's sweating sweat now, but it'll be blood in the Garden of Gethsemane. We'll talk about that too. How could that happen? Is that just you know, artistic license? And the answer is no. It's a real thing, and we'll get to that when we get to it.
The disciples were shocked that a Gentile could be converted.
Yeah.
They were really amazed by that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, think of it. They didn't believe they could hear. How can a Gentile know God? This is a good one for us. How can a Gentile know God when they haven't known God? I mean, for the Hebrew, for the Jew, the only way to know God is through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There is no other way. That's it. God is the chosen people. The Jews are the chosen people, and that's the only avenue to God. Period. You're done. So this is why even those Gentiles who converted to Judaism in the first century that were allowed in the temple weren't allowed to go past the first foyer. Basically, they were allowed kind of in name only. They were allowed to give their alms. They were allowed to support the temple with their money, but they weren't allowed to get all the way to the inside. They were really, you know, third-class citizens because they couldn't really know God. You know, they didn't really have the background. And it's this jealousy. It's envy. It's this you're not allowed to know God without the suffering and the pain and the history that we have. You can't do it. It's not fair. You know, when I was in Israel, when I was in Jerusalem, there was a big tussle going on daily. It was kind of everybody waiting for the powder keg to pop. And it was because the Armenians were putting up posters, which you can do anywhere. There's no law in the old city. You can put up a poster anywhere you want. Someone else can tear it down, but you can put it up anywhere you want. And they would put up posters everywhere talking about the upcoming service in the Armenian quarter of the old city to commemorate the Holocaust, the Armenian Holocaust. And the Jews were going in night, pre-dawn. The army would go around the city and they would find all these posters and tear them all down. And I asked why, one of our Jewish liaisons why, and this guy was very, very honest about his people and very self-effacing. And he said flat out, he said, we have Holocaust envy. That we don't want anyone to have a Holocaust but us. It defines us. It's who we are. And so they can use another word. So we've talked to them about this. We've had this issue in government where we have told them that they need to use a different word. They can use any word they want, but they can't use that one. And if that poster goes up with that word on it, we will not allow it to happen. You can't have that. Only we can have that. And we said that's not right. And he goes, yeah, I know, I completely disagree with it. But it's what we are. It's part of what we are. So this idea that a Gentile just can't have God, it's scandalous. And all the more so when Gaius is held up as the example to those who are the closest to Christ, right? That's just, man. Now we really have to go. Let me see her a little bit here. Ransom for many, thinking about shalom. Okay, so this little tidbit about the house. So we've got two little shrines going on. Remember that? So he goes over to one. Obviously, he's saying, I'm done with these people. I'm done with the shrine. So he's blowing out the candles on the shrine with the snakes. He showed a close up with it. I don't know who that was. That may have been Zeus. I looked all over for shrines like that for a long time trying to find them, and I can't find them. So it could have been any one of a number of gods, probably Zeus. Usually if you're going to have a shrine to somebody, it's Zeus. Might as well go to the top guy, right? The other guy, see the big statue? That's Caesar. That was Caesar. He had a shrine to Caesar because Caesar, remember, the Romans consider Caesar as a god. So that would put him in good stead as other politicians and other military people came into his house to have this big statue, which he would have paid for to have this statue made. And the more money you've spent, the more august is your worship and the more credibility you have.
Those are the North Koreans.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, it's like the North Koreans with Kim Jong-un, the bigger
And
poster.
their idol worship of the Kim family.
Yep. And this thing when he goes over and starts teaching the boys and he says shalom and they go there's no sh sound in Greek. So they would not have said, they would never have said that sound. That's a completely foreign sound. Paul, he is Saul, also known as Paul. The sh sound is actually the correct sound for Saul, is Shaul. And for the translation into Greek, they would have used a different sound because they didn't have an sh sound. So they changed the sh to p sound, Paul. Yeah, there's no sh. So teaching the boys an sh is also extremely dangerous for young Roman boys to be running around yelling shalom, shalom, shalom. I mean, you think that this may be foreshadowing that something is going to come back to bite them in a little bit. I think that's probably right. And the last bit I thought was just really, really very special. I hope you saw the same thing. Jesus is tormented. He is looking forward at his death, the separation from the people that he loves. At the same time, he is suffering that the people that he loves are so distant from him. Like he's saying Psalm 38, my own people are far from me. They just don't get it. They're not understanding. The gravity of this has not reached them. They're not yet part of me in the way that they need to be and that I want them to be. All this piling on Jesus. And he turns to the right. And who comforts who?
Yeah, guys.
Giants conference.
Yeah.
That also threw me.
Yeah. It's what a beautiful image that the Son of God in a moment of emotional recourse is being comforted by someone who has faith. Yeah.
That scene reminded me of when he went to his father's tomb after they almost pushed him off the cliff. Just kind of obviously, or he was looking at the wine, so just a kind of sentimental, quiet time and thinking and struggling, and someone else comes to help him. But like you said, how beautiful that it was.
Yeah.
Someone that his people would normally reject.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe like that could give him hope that even though his own people aren't doing it, the way it should work is that all people are welcome and loved by God.
Right.
That is for the first time truly showing up, like the Samaritan woman.
Yes. If Jesus is seeing now in his own disciples, not the failure and the loss of his own disciples, but the failure and loss of much of his people, he's also seeing in Gaius how this is going to come to fruition, how the understanding of who he is, the belief in who he is, and the turning to him, the faith in him, is going to go so much farther. So this was, and now we'll back up a little bit. He's going along the road. He's saying Psalm 38. He's crying out to his Father for help, for guidance, for inspiration, for peace, for shalom. And he's absorbed in this moment of foreshadowing, looking at the imagery of the winepress. And then Gaius comes. Isn't that the answer to the prayer on the road? He's crying out to his Father for help, and God sends Gaius. Gaius didn't come. Maybe he came to him to say, "My son is whole," and thank you. But that moment when he looked at Jesus in his torment, when Gaius took Jesus in his arms, it wasn't to say thank you for healing my son. It was to comfort him. That's why he put his hand on the back of his head, was to hold him and let him know that he was being held. Just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Also, I find it a little sad that looking at the wine press and thinking of what that means, and having a Roman come as well as a little also foreshadowing.
Yeah. So much going on. All right. Well, that was a powerful second half of 4. Much to take away with us when we as we wait for 5 to come this week. Think about that. Who am I in the crowd? And who am I in the crowd today? How do I live out my role in the crowd as a follower of Jesus? Where am I going to be? And then that maybe just that last scene, that last bit. We have so much pain in our lives, and so much discord in our lives, and maybe even moments of hopelessness sometimes in our lives. But if we could come face to face with Christ with the same in that place that he was, and could we find comfort for him? Can we find comfort for anybody? If we were exposed to somebody who was desperate, who was hurt, who was wounded, who needed someone in that moment, could we find that person in us for that other person? And if we can, then certainly Jesus can be that person for us in our need, to help us in our moments, our times of pain and discord and hurt. We can be that for someone else, then he can be that for us. I think we just have to let it be, have to allow it. All right, guys, have a wonderful night. Thanks for sticking it out. We're a little bit late on this one. Sorry, it's always so good.
That's all good.
It's all good. Have a blessed night, a beautiful sleep. I pray that everybody is doing well by the morning, and especially Sharon with all of her taste buds back, and enjoying a subtle pastry in the morning that none of us can taste but her. Many prayers for you as you go forward. Good night, everybody. God bless you.
Good
all.
night.
Thank you.
Pray for Florida. Hurricane just made landfall.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Pray for Florida.
Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mom.
Bye.